Good afternoon. My name is Justice Kofi Barnes of the Association of Justice and Treatment Professionals. Welcome to the second plenary of the conference. And it's what makes a court a drug treatment court. I think what I'll do is that I will begin by sharing my screen. That'll probably be a good place to start. As I try and get used to these technological things. Here we go. Okay. But before we do anything, I would like to acknowledge where I am speaking to you from. I am speaking to you today as a settler from our office, which is in the traditional territory of the Ashinebek, Huron-Wendat, and Haudenosaunee, as well as the Ojibwe and Chippewa peoples. The land that is home to the Métis and most recently the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, who are direct descendants of the Mississaugas of the Credit. We recognize and deeply appreciate their historic connection to this land. We also recognize the contributions of the Métis, Inuit, and other indigenous people, the contributions they have made, both in shaping and strengthening this community in particular, and our province and country as a whole. I wish to pay my respects to the many indigenous people who live and work here today. I acknowledge that many of you, if not all, have faced the pain of racism in your own ancestral homeland. You know, a number of summers ago, in 2018, there was a string of robberies in the neighborhood. It was actually thefts, car thefts. And what was happening during that time was somebody was going around smashing windows and stealing valuables. And sometimes these valuables included things like engine parts. And people could come and their car was damaged and they could not enter or use it. Or sometimes they will lose something extremely personal. These activities had an impact on people, on the real people's lives. There was John who lost his employment because his car was broken into. He couldn't get to work and he needed the money. Mary lost her precious family memories. And Cindy, who was a single mother, also lost her job. And as a result, she and her family were teetering on the brink of homelessness. She had 3 children to support, and on and on. So these thefts were affecting ordinary people. They were having an impact on people's lives. And as you pause for a moment and think about whether if something like this happened to you or to a member of your family, what your thought process will be. What should happen to this person who is doing these things? What if it happened to you? What if it kept happening to you over and over? You'd be expecting law enforcement to do something. What if I told you that the police eventually found out that the culprit was Mary? Mary was 28 years old. She's been responsible for this. And in fact, Mary was a pro. She's been doing this for years. She's been engaging in these activities for years, terrorizing different parts of her neighborhood. And oh yes, it appears that Mary has been caught before. Mary has been caught doing this thing a number of times. She has, in fact, been tried and sent to jail many times. This will be the 32nd time Mary has been involved in something like this. What should happen to Mary? Should we increase the number of jail sentences? After all, during the time that Mary is in jail, nothing seems to be happening in the neighborhood. what should happen to Mary? Based on what you know so far, what is your concern? I take it your concern is probably public safety. I take it that your concern is trying to keep your neighborhood safe. I take it that you feel empathy towards John, Mary, and Cindy. Well, there's also somebody else, Rob. And in fact, Rob owns a corner store in the neighborhood, and Mary has been robbing Rob blind. And you may think that does not make a difference. Rob is already facing very, very, very small margins. He's not a rich man. He can hardly pay his mortgage. And when these things keep happening, it keeps causing Rob trouble. In fact, he's facing bankruptcy because he can't afford to make his payments from people like Mary, who continue to cause difficulty for him. Rob, John, Cindy, these are people we can relate to. We want to walk in society and feel safe. We are focusing on them. That is what we can think of. We want to be safe. But there's something else about Mary who is causing this problem. She's a heroin addict, and she has been arrested. She's not been charged with a drug offense, but she's been charged with theft and damage to property. What is it about Mary? She has suffered trauma. She watched her brother get killed as he walked across the street by a motor vehicle, a terrible accident when she was 13. She never recovered. Because of her use of drugs to help her forget her pain, she's been in so many different places where she's been overly traumatized. Her health is failing. She has overdosed a number of times. Fortunate that she's still alive. And she has observed people around her die. She's committing these crimes to support her habit. Does that start to change your calculus? Who are you concerned more about? Mary? She's a human being who is suffering and committing these crimes. How about Rob? A human being who deserves to be safe. How about John? A guy who had a right to go to work and live his life. Mary is suffering. Mary should be safe. But so should John and Rob and Cindy. So this substance abuse problem that Mary has is what brings Mary to the court system. And the courts are now in a situation where we are like, okay, we have Mary. We have put Mary through the system many times. She keeps coming back because her substance abuse issue is not being dealt with. As a court system, the court system is not set up to address these issues. We don't want to deal with all these substance abuse problems. We don't want to deal with the mental health problem because we are not equipped to do it. We just are there to find out what happened and figure out who is responsible and decide what the punishment should be. But what are we going to do? There is nowhere else for Mary to go except that she's charged with these offenses. She comes to court, and therefore is the court's responsibility now to address it. Society expects the court to take an action on an issue that has its roots in addiction, mental illness, homelessness, poverty, some difficulty. So social problems such as drug and gambling, addiction, homelessness, dysfunction have resulted in recurring illegal behavior, which has deleterious consequences not only to society, but also to the persons who are committing these offenses. So what is the court to do? And that is where you had programs that have developed like diversion programs. you have restorative justice programs, you have treatment court programs like drug treatment court programs, mental health court programs, wellness court programs, community court programs, and community support court programs, community justice programs, is because the court is now beginning to recognize we got to do something. We are not equipped in dealing with these issues, but we have to get some help because society expects us to react, to do something. And that is where these programs, courts are coming up, or these special programs are being developed to try and address the root causes of these issues. It's not because the courts think that they are the place to go. No. It would be nice if society had enough programs so that people like Mary can be captured before they got into trouble. But once they get into the system, we have to deal with something. And so today we are going to talk about one program called the Drug Treatment Court. The Drug Treatment Court is one of many. It's one of the most well-known because it is well-researched, but it is not the only way. But it is an effective way for certain people, not for everybody, so long as it's done properly. So some of the lessons we've learned as we do these justice and treatment integrations, certainly is that one shoe doesn't fit all. There are different people, different circumstances that work for different people. So I'm going to talk to you about the people for whom drug treatment court has been found to work. In doing so, I'm not telling you what I think. I'm just telling you what the research says. And so drug treatment court, it's what I call the marriage between treatment and the justice system. And it's one that engages in a rigorous, intensive program. It's resource intensive, and it is suitable for highly addicted, high risk people, right? And what I mean by high risk is that people who have a high likelihood of reoffending, people who have high needs in terms of their be addiction, social needs, treatment needs. Those are the people for whom drug treatment court works. Drug treatment courts that have tried to work, taking people who were low risk and have low needs have in fact been found to make those people worse. That has been shown by virtue of the research. So as I've indicated, drug treatment courts integrate treatment and substance abuse into the processes, and they facilitate a transition from the traditional way of addressing things to a more therapeutic, because we move from a scenario whereby we are trying to determine what happened. That's what the traditional does. Who committed this offense? And once they committed, we found out who committed this offense, what should happen to them? Or if we find out they did not commit the offense, then we let them go. Drug treatment court and the other interventions are not interested in who did what. They are more interested in how do we prevent or reduce the likelihood of this happening again? How do we improve the quality of life of the person who is before the court to ensure that, to reduce the likelihood that this is not going to happen again? And therefore, at the end of a process, drug treatment courts try to create a situation whereby people receive a non-custodial disposition, one that, results in a scenario whereby they do not go to jail. Now, one of the things that drug treatment courts have not been able to do yet, and it's a systemic issue, something that Parliament has to deal with, the courts can address, is that as much as these people do not go to jail if they complete their programs, then they get non-custodial dispositions, and which means that they can get criminal records, and the impact that can have on them when they're trying to get jobs and so on and so forth, a real issue that has to be addressed. One of the things also that has occurred is that drug treatment courts have also had to deal with the reality of what they are dealing with, right? And dealing with substance abuse and dealing with chronic misuse that we tend to call addiction or substance misuse. And we understand that relapse is something that will occur. It's a lifelong experience. People will rise and fall. People will rise and fall. People will stabilize, and therefore the courts have had to understand that the gold standard of getting off drugs, it's not the only measure of success. That is necessary to find ways when people are substantially complying. For example, if you have somebody who may not have stopped using drugs yet, but can get a job, can be more, can make appointments and can engage in pro-social behavior, that is a level of success. And in fact, there will be a session later on, I think on Thursday, that addresses those type of issues. So I'm now going to talk to you about the things that research has found to be the success pillars of drug treatment court. As I said, there are different types of interventions that involve the combination of treatment and justice. There are different types. I am talking to you about a drug treatment court. It doesn't mean the drug treatment court is the only way to go, but it means that if you are a drug treatment court, these 10 to 14 pillars are part of your program. The first thing is there is a partnership between treatment and the court process. There's collaboration of both processes. Neither system is superior to each other. A team approach is adopted, and there's immediate treatment that is utilized, and ongoing judicial supervision is important. So that is number one. Number two is not only are members a team, but a non-adversarial approach to decision-making is required. And there are opportunities for people to discuss issues. And usually in most drug treatment courts or drug treatment courts that are working well, most decisions are made by consensus, even though the judge will have a final say, but the judge usually rarely disagrees with a group decision. So when you talk about a group, it gives you a sense of, see the list: judge, defense, prosecution, treatment, probation, law enforcement, the community in general terms, and family, for example. And one of the things, and community partners like job training, housing, and so on and so forth. And in fact, many drug treatment courts are beginning to realize that it's also important actually to have peers, peer support, peer mentors. On Thursday, between Thursday the 27th, between 2:30 to 3:30 p.m., Pam Spurvey, a graduate of an Alberta drug treatment court and a provincial peer mentor, is going to give us a sense of how important peer support is. And when it comes to all of this collaboration, creating opportunities for there to be ongoing, a place where they can be, we call it pre-court meetings in drug treatment court, but where you can have that group of people around the table having conversations to discuss what is coming up for the day, who is coming up for the day, and what are we going to do about that person, how are they doing, and they use their respective viewpoints and expertise to try and come up with some kind of holistic plan. So Jessica Farlade is going to be talking about this collaboration, but she's going to be talking about it from the perspective of a specific treatment model that is known as the risk needs responsivity. And in fact, when I get through this, you realize that as much as there are some general principles that guide drug treatment courts adopt different treatment modalities. And today between 2:30 and 3:30, Jessica is going to talk about how that kind of collaboration works in her court. So, for the team to work, there has to be some professional boundaries in place. It's important for both the people to understand the roles of their respective persons, right? The prosecutor's role in protecting the public interest, the defense role to ensure the due process rights of the client, the health provider's role to guide clients who come through and try to minimize the harm that they are suffering. The probation officer's role to supervise, assess, in some courts to treat, police to prevent, investigate, solve crime, and social worker in an effort to maximize opportunities for this person to be successful. So you can see that all of these people will have their viewpoints and come at it at a viewpoint from different angles, and that allows there to be some type of holistic approach. The third thing is efforts are made to get people into treatment as soon as possible. Because, in general terms, when people are suffering from addiction or suffering in some fashion, right, denial tends to be a big part of the process. And the theory is that usually when people are facing a crisis like an arrest or something, they are more likely to want help. And so drug treatment courts try to get to people shortly after they are arrested when they need help. But in reality, we know that there are a lot of people who, they would take drug treatment court programs because, even though it's supposed to be voluntary, because they want to get out of jail, right? They want to get out of jail as soon as possible. They want a reduced sentence. There may be a whole bunch of external things that may get them to get into treatment, and that is the reason why there's a lot of debate, of course, because it's well known that internal motivation is far better than external motivation, and so that's where the treatment providers come in. The idea is that treatment providers will then take these persons and work with them to assist them in transforming that external motivation to internal motivation. And for those for whom that transition is made, it is very helpful because they have a greater likelihood of succeeding. One of the things I've indicated is high risk, high needs. Not everybody is suitable for drug treatment courts. Drug treatment courts who have tried to go low risk, low needs people have found that they've been very successful. Drug treatment courts have been very unsuccessful. Drug treatment courts that have tried to mix adults and young people have found that to be a complete disaster. Now, and also, the fourth thing is that treatment services have to address a wide range of services. You remember Mary? Mary had issues. She had a substance abuse problem. She had trauma that comes from what she witnessed, and also the trauma that has come from her day-to-day activities, just the lifestyle that she lives. She has issues with respect to her mental health. And there's been times that she's overdosed. There's been times when she's tried to commit suicide. She's homeless, and on and on and on. All of these things require the ability to have a community, a range of services and available, and the need to access community resources, right? So again, drug treatment courts have to have those services, and they have to ensure that the type of treatment that they adopt is one, the type of people they take in are one for which they have resources available to address it. There are all kinds of treatment services, right? I mean, there are strategies. There are some special universal screening strategies. There's motivational enhancement therapy, there's contingency management, there's medicated assisted treatment, there are relapse prevention strategies, there are treatment for special people with special needs, there are treatment that address core criminogenic needs. And so it's important that there be an effective assessment process in place to ensure that we can identify what people need. And that's what drug treatment courts have. They have an effective assessment process, which is an assessment process that's got two parts, right? You have an assessment process that deals with the legal issues to ensure that you have somebody who is suitable and meets the legal requirements, taking into account public safety issues. And we're going to have a session that Joanne and Jace are going to do a session on that. And I'm actually, I forgot to write down the time when they're doing it. But I believe it's either tomorrow or Thursday. You could check. They'll be doing a session to show how the Crown tries to assess and make determinations in terms of who can go into the program on a legal side of things, right? Because remember the issue with Mary and so on and so forth. The drug treatment could have to develop a program that can keep Mary safe, but that can also keep Rob, Cindy, and all of those people safe, right? And so there are a whole bunch of people that work together to do this, because after the Crown has done that, then you have the treatment services who are going to do an assessment, right, to see what type of needs the person has. And today, actually, between 4:30 and 5:30 p.m., Dr. Sheila French is going to talk about how the risk needs responsivity model is used in assessing high risk, high needs individuals to get into the program. And in fact, she's going to talk about what the Lethbridge drug treatment court does. There may be other drug treatment courts that may use different processes. So you see, when you think about Mary, you see that the idea is to create a holistic treatment. Drug treatment courts try to have treatment services that provide holistic treatment. You find that drug treatment courts will have various resources, right? The resources will determine what type of people the drug treatment court can take. Some drug treatment courts have good outpatient and inpatient. They use good outpatient and inpatient strategies. I talked about the risk needs responsivity model that is used. Some drug treatment courts rely on cognitive behavioral treatment. Some drug treatment courts may use social learning mode of treatment, etc., etc., etc. Right? And so the effort is to try and be as holistic as possible, because many times substance abuse and addiction are just what you may call a symptom of a larger problem, and it becomes important to address those type of issues. And we've learned, what is actually happening. And after many years watching many drug treatment courts across the country, not just drug treatment courts, many justice and treatment interventions of so many different kinds. You have various persons. You have the treatment providers who say, listen, our focus is on the client before us. And then you have the prosecutor who says, my focus is on public safety. And then you have the defense lawyer who says, my focus is on the client. And then you have the social workers focused on the client, and so on and so forth. What is actually happening is that all of these people, whether they are aware of it or not, what they are actually doing as they coordinate is they are trying to create an environment where the participant or the client will be safe, where their needs will be taken care of, and at the same time, the needs and potential victims of their antisocial behavior will be reduced, right? So I always say that all of these interventions, you are working together to keep the participants safe and also to keep society safe. And the two go hand in hand in the drug treatment court world. Now, urine screens, right? Urine screens are used, random and frequent urine screens are utilized. And this is an example of how important interdisciplinary training is, right? Because I remember as a young prosecutor some 30 years ago, having helped to start the first drug treatment court, the judge and I, who were pioneers in the program, were planning a urine screen system. And don't forget, in court, we are used to specific times. So say, okay, Kofi, he'll say, well, say, Kofi, well, so what we'll do is we'll have them give urine screen every 5 days on this specific time. Because don't forget, in the court system, we have time, you do it on this day, and I know it happens in other disciplines, but I'm just using it as an example, right? So that is what we understood. What we had to learn, and this is where cross-disciplinary training is important, was that substances stay in the body for a certain period of time. And therefore, when you have predictable urine screen times, people can beat the test, right? So we realized that it became important to become random. Another thing also that became important to understand was, you see, you had to change your mindset through interdisciplinary training. You recognize that what you are trying to do is address the root cause of this person's substance abuse, including a whole bunch of other issues that there are all kinds of professionals working on within a drug treatment court umbrella. So in fact, instead of urine screens being used to say, aha, got you, you used drugs yesterday, urine screens started to be used as therapeutic tools to enable persons in drug treatment court to understand how the people are doing, how they are functioning, and how to use those screens to assist them, hold them accountable by in a therapeutic way. And in a way that accords with an understanding of what addiction is, what trauma is, what mental illness could be, what living in a homeless fashion could be, what living in a poverty could be, what having trauma could be. And that is the reason why interdisciplinary training is so important, because it helps understand how to achieve these objectives whilst protecting the person and protecting the community. Sanctions and incentives is something that are used to also assist. Now, this picture is interesting. I think that is rather harsh, actually, but it's the use of various strategies to try to support people as they are going through their treatment. Is to use it in a way that is positive, in a way that is therapeutically smart, in a way that tells the person who is going through the process that, look, we care about you, you are valued, you are important, you have potential, but as part of our caring, we have to hold you accountable. It is smart because we try to tailor these, they are therapeutically informed, always involved with therapists to try to see what is the appropriate sanction or incentive to use. In fact, research has demonstrated that, contrary to popular expectation, what one may think, just threatening to put a person in jail is not as effective. That's what the research indicates. And sanctions or incentives that help them grow, that help them understand that they are important, and help them understand that is why they are being taken, held accountable, are important. So there may be an in-court admonishment, there may be frequent court attendances, some urine screen, there may be community service hours. But sometimes there's an essay, there's a treatment contract. This whole concept of sanctioning for use is very, very controversial, and many drug treatment courts are moving away from it. But some drug treatment courts are also are still doing it. Revocation of bail and delayed sanctions. Giving the person praise in court, reducing court attendance is an example of some of the incentives, certificates for achievement, having people leave early, giving them opportunity to have social outings, the use of gift cards, and so on and so forth, right? Is very important. Now, before I go, I want to go back and talk about pillar number 5, the use of urine screens. On June 26th, which is in a few days, I think it's tomorrow, between 2:30 and 3:30, Valerie Cochran and Cara Pinkson of the Newfoundland Provincial Court will talk to you about how urine screens are in fact used in a therapeutic fashion. I just want to make sure I mention that before I go any further, right? And so these incentives and sanctions are really intended. At the end of the day, they are used in a specific way. And as I said, is to let the person know that you are somebody of value, you have potential, we care about you, we are going to hold you accountable, but we're going to hold you accountable in a way that holds you accountable, but also helps you towards what do you call it, ongoing treatment success, at least as you grow forward, and that's very important. Now, one of the things that completely shocked me, now number 7 is ongoing judicial supervision, right? Ongoing judicial supervision is so important, and it's essential for the judge to have one-on-one interaction with each participant. And it's important for the judge to have discussion with the team to understand each team member, to know what's going on with this person. So when they're having a conversation, to be able to make a much more sensible conversation. Now, one of the things that totally surprised us, to some of us were the pioneers of drug treatment course in Canada, and one of the things that we were surprised was the research that said the judge was so important. It didn't make any sense to us. Why is this judge so important? And I've been trying to. Now there are so many reasons, but I came across a book called "Problem Solving Courts: Criminal Justice and the International Gold Standard: Reframing the English and Welsh Drug Treatment Court," written by Anna Grace Kawalek. And at page 32 of that book, I found something that completely explains why a drug treatment court judge is different from a regular judge. And it's not because a drug treatment court judge is better than a regular judge. It's because a regular judge is doing something different. A regular judge is involved in trying to find out who committed this crime, how did it happen, and what are we going to do about it. A drug treatment court judge is doing something totally different. So they are a different person, a different role. They are saying, how do we help this person in terms of the underlying thing so that it doesn't happen again? So listen to this. From page 33, she talks about magistrate, but I'll say judge. This is the way in which people in drug treatment court are describing their judge. Judges are interested and compassionate towards my life circumstances. Judges give me a voice. I can ask questions when I need to. Judges understand what it's like to have drug or alcohol problems. Judges speak to me slowly, clearly, and loudly when necessary. Judges are realistic when they set my goals for the next review. Judges have hope and faith that I'll make progress. Judges do not rush or interrupt me when I'm speaking. Judges help me build my strengths. Judges listen to my point of view. Judges are sincere and honest when they speak to me. Judges make me feel positive about my future. Judges praise me when I'm doing well. Judges speak to me without pity or disdain. Judges are personable Judges are attentive when I'm speaking. Judges reiterate my goals so that they are clear. Judges motivate me. And that is why the judges are so important in drug treatment court, and why ongoing communication with judges are important. And so drug treatment court judges understand that they have to be empathetic, show respect, have active listening, show positive focus, and be non-paternalistic, and be very clear and when they are speaking, and adopt a non-coercive manner. The next important thing is evaluation. Listen, we all have ideas of whether our program is working well or not. I used to think that, in the drug treatment court in the early days, we had this system, the judge and I, the team actually had this system whereby if somebody was doing, I just described to you what a judge has to do in terms of how a judge has to the role a judge has to play. Well, sometimes it's not good for the judge to just go and ream a person out. So the judge and I had this system whereby he would do all the supportive stuff. Then he would turn around and say, okay, Mr. Barnes, do you have any comments? And that was the time for me to just show that I was angry, even if I wasn't angry, in a public way. Just, we thought we were motivating this person. But we have since learned that that was the wrong approach. And that is why interdisciplinary training is important, because we realize that many people, if not all of the persons who are going through the justice system, have been traumatized in some fashion. They've gone through trauma in some fashion. There is something that has traumatized them. And that is the reason why many times they react to routine things in an exaggerated fashion. So me, in those 30 years ago, standing in the courtroom, giving this guy a speech, reaming him out, shaming him in public, as much as I, based on my past training as a lawyer and prosecutor, thought I was holding him accountable, I was just making him worse, right? And what was shown in the evaluation was, we did an evaluation of our program, and we realized that it is not when I get up and ream somebody else that was very effective for people. It is when I said something nice. Now, who would have thought it? That was true, right? That is why you have to evaluate your program, because sometimes you think what you're doing is working, but program evaluation is very important. And also, interdisciplinary training, I have already talked about how important it is. And that is why a lot of drug treatment courts have training sessions. And that's the reason why training is good for everybody in the justice and treatment space, whether you're in drug treatment court or something else, because it keeps us informed. It helps us learn from each other. And that is why the Association of Justice and Treatment Professionals has created a scenario whereby we have community practice groups where people can start to share information among themselves. We've actually and we have the webinars and the conferences and so on and so forth. And now we've even begun to create a provincial, territorial advisory committees to ensure, just to try and get the universities involved, because we're all practitioners and so on and so forth. We are busy doing our work, everything with everybody. We all think we are doing great stuff, but it's nice to get people from the outside who are academics, who are trained, who can look at what we are doing, give us insights, and always sort of twig us if there's been some new research, make us aware of research, and so on and so forth. By evaluation and interdisciplinary training is important. Number 10, I'll indicate, and I'll just this is what I'll indicate. As you can see, I've already talked to you about the fact that there are successful and unsuccessful drug treatment courts, and in fact, ongoing training is important. And I've told you what the AJTP offers. Now, number 10 is community partnerships, right? You've seen all of these things, problems that Mary had. Drug treatment courts can't just focus on addiction. And they may have a link with an addiction treatment provider, but they cannot just focus on addiction. So they need community partners to help them address all of these issues, right? And all of these issues have to be managed in some way. Case management is important because Mary is going to see her therapist to help her deal with her issues with her children. And then she's got somebody who's going to help her with housing, and somebody's going to help her get his identification, and somebody's going to help her deal with the trauma related to her her brother that she saw who died. And it's important to have good, effective case management to make sure that everything is moving smoothly. So case management is number 11, is an important component of the drug treatment court. Another important component is the program has got to be flexible, right? Have to be able to adapt to the needs of various people coming in. There's a story of a person who came into drug treatment court, and he was assessed as having an opiate addiction and so on and so forth, but he just was not complying with appointments. He was not making appointments, even though he said he knew what was happening. He didn't have to make appointments. Initially, we thought it was because of substance abuse, but we realized that, he was taking medication to assist. He seemed to have the substance abuse under control. But why was he not making his appointments? Why was he not doing the things that, he was supposed to do? And I realized that this guy had a brain injury. Right. Or you have to be flexible to adjust. Or, I remember there was a time when a treatment provider joined a group session when I was in the drug treatment, came and said, look, I'm joined a pre-COVID, came and said, look, something, I'm dealing with John, and John seems closed. I mean, he's not talking. I don't think it's appropriate. It's just not appropriate. I don't think he's not speaking. Give me one line answers and stuff. Now, John was a black guy. In case you do not know, I'm a black guy. So I said, look, give me a second. Let me have a chat with John. Okay. I go to John. I said, John, man, look, listen, you gotta, there may be, I know you don't feel comfortable with her. I get it. I said, look, John, I don't even feel comfortable with her myself. I mean, there's some differences, right? But she's here to help you. Just sort of chill and speak to her, right? And I went back to her and I said, look, okay, just try and make him feel comfortable. It's not that he can't speak to you. He doesn't trust you. You got to make sure that he open up so that he can trust you. Or there's a scenario whereby there was a drug treatment court that found that a lot of the females participants were leaving their program, right? And the reason when they checked is their program was not gender specific. The few men in the program felt uncomfortable being in all these groups with these men, or maybe trying to be flexible to recognize that, we have a whole bunch of people with children in our program. We got to make adjustments, right? Or one of the interesting things too, that also is I have visited a number of drug treatment courts. And so whenever I go to a drug treatment court, I like to go to look at the non-drug treatment court. I like to go to what you call in the provincial court, what you call the set date court, where nobody's going to drug treatment court, but the first place where everybody goes. And when I look at the demographics of that group, and I walk into a drug treatment court, and a drug treatment court doesn't reflect that demographic, I know the drug treatment court has a problem it's not aware of. And that's the reason why being aware of cultural diversity is so important. Having that general awareness, right? Because, unfortunately, we don't live in a perfect world. So, for example, unfortunately, some police officers deal with different populations differently. And it's been proven, there's a lot of research on it. I've written judgments where I've put this in, so I'm not making this stuff up. So if you're a prosecutor where all you do is you look at the criminal record and just look at how many types of assaults are there and so on and so forth, you have not taken into account the race card. Because it may be that this guy is being exposed more. Right? And if you're aware of that, it means that maybe you ask some more questions. Why do you have so many assaults? Is it a push? Is it something violent? Recognize that we all walk through this world. We walk through on the same streets, but we don't experience society the same way. Being aware allows you to be flexible. And that is the reason why we always need to drug treatment courts need to be flexible. And then the last thing I will talk about the last component is program flexibility, is aftercare. Okay, I was recently putting together a collection of stories of people across Canada who have gone to drug treatment courts. And there was somebody who had written such a beautiful, beautiful, powerful, inspiring story. And I was trying to get her permission to use it. She had given to another judge, the judge passed it on to me. She had finished drug treatment court. She was excellent in drug treatment court. But what had happened was drug treatment court had said, excellent job, you did a good job, gave her a graduation, shook her hand, and she went into the world. All her supports were gone. And she was filled with such resentment. Her heart was, life was difficult. She was backsliding. She was having a hard time. And she didn't have that same love for drug treatment. She said, they left me alone. Addiction, trauma, and all those issues are lifelong issues. And having an ongoing aftercare plan. It doesn't mean that the court stays with them forever, but the court ensures that there is some linkage that these people can be handed on over so that they can have ongoing support. And in fact, that is why a lot of drug treatment courts, in fact, have scenarios where people will continue to receive assistance afterwards. Now, I now, after I've stopped sharing, can tell I'm totally frozen. I hope you guys have been able to hear me. Are there any questions? Or can you send anything? Can anybody send anything through the chat? Okay. I don't seem to be able to connect with anyone. There's not seem to be any questions at this moment in time. Now, let me see if anybody can raise their hand or do something so that I can have a sense. Okay. Okay, thank you. I'm being heard. That is beautiful. I got a thumbs up and so on and so forth, which is great. You know, I am in my chambers, and my chambers is notorious for this. Once in a while, it will freeze, and then I'm stuck. So now I'm looking at you right now. I can see myself with my hands up, and then I've got this look on my face. Kind of interesting. I do not know if I like myself or not. Now, I'm also told that you can't access the Q&A, which is unfortunate. It seems to be an ongoing problem. I had the same problem in, what do you call it, this morning. Does anybody have any question with respect to that you can send through the chat? If not, I'll say that I think that you guys have had enough from me. Okay. Paul, thank you very much. My fellow judge has told me that I did a good job, so which is great. Sometimes you need that feedback. All right. Well, since there are no what do you call it, other questions, I want to thank you all for participating. I am sorry that I'm frozen, but that's just what happened to me. There is another presentation that is scheduled for 2:30 today that you could join. You could check. I don't seem to remember exactly what it is at this point, but you could check it. Oh yes, it is Jessica Farlade. It will talk about the risk needs responsivity model and how that is used to ensure collaboration. So thank you, and have a good afternoon. Thank you.